Oh, good morning. Thanks again for joining me with Story Time with Joyce. Last week we read in chapter 20, which was Changes Ain't Easy. And boy, isn't that the truth. But we learned where we left off was Betty's best friend, Serena, invited her to go out to a get-together with her because Betty's just been working really, really hard. So this chapter is chapter 21, and it's called John. Serena and Betty stayed friends all throughout each other's ups and downs. Serena loved Betty and knew way before Betty found out that Arvin was, as Betty put it, no good. For Arvin had tried to get her to go out with him. At first she thought it was a harmless gesture. However, when Arvin put his arm around her and whispered into her ear something to the effect that he would like to bed her, she realized what he really wanted. She never told Betty. Serena and Betty continued chatting on the trolley all the way to the meeting. Serena stood up and said, "Betty, this is our stop. It's been so good to hear you laugh. It's been a long time since you have. Let's go and have some fun." "Thanks, you're right," Betty said, smiling. "Come on, follow me and let's go in," Serena said, waving her hand in the direction of the meeting. Betty followed Serena, feeling a bit nervous but excited at the same time. They both walked through the door and entered a big room. They were greeted by a nice-looking man that said, "Welcome, ladies. Glad you came." Then he turned to Serena and asked, "Who's your friend?" Serena quickly answered, "John, this is Betty Jameson, a longtime friend." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Jameson," John said. "It's Betty, and nice to meet you as well," said Betty. "Well, Betty, come on in and get yourself something to eat." "Can I get you ladies something to drink?" John asked. "Some coffee would be nice," Serena answered. "I'll take some too, thank you," Betty said on the heels of Serena's request. John and Betty talked all evening. He even told Serena that he would take Betty home. He was smitten. That meeting was the beginning of John and Betty's courtship. Betty was happy for the first time in such a long time. She didn't care that he was almost 20 years older. They enjoyed each other's company, and it didn't hurt that she was a Democrat, for he was an alderman in one of the districts. Each district in Chicago is represented by an alderman who was elected to serve a 4-year term. In addition to representing the interests of their ward residents, the 50 aldermen comprised the Chicago City Council. Betty took John to every one of his meetings. She really didn't understand all this talk about new legislation, but she did enjoy being with John. It was nice after watching the boys to come home, get dressed up, and go out. After courting for a year, John asked Betty to marry him. And of course, Betty said yes. One night, when John and Betty were having dinner, the discussion turned to their wedding. "Betty, do you mind if we get married at City Hall?" John asked. Without hesitation, Betty answered, "No, John, I don't mind at all. Since my divorce situation doesn't allow us to get married in the church, getting married at City Hall seems the best thing to do. Let's get married next weekend. What do you say?" John said. I would like my daughter, Carol, to be part of it as well as Ruth. Carol is 50 miles from here, in that boarding school I told you about. It will take some doing to get her here. Well, let's get her here for the wedding and have her stay. She can live with us, you know. I have a big house. You gave your notice to the Altmans, didn't you?" "Yes, today was my last day. I also told the agency that I wouldn't be cleaning on weekends anymore either," Betty said, smiling. "Good, so it's settled then. We can drive down in my car and pick up Carol and let the nuns know she's not coming back," John said emphatically. "I better call them and let them know," Betty said happily. It had been 2 years since Betty and Arvin's divorce. Arvin had gotten himself one of those snazzy automobiles, as he put it. He picked up Carol twice a month and brought her to the brothel where she stayed with him and Lori. His ladies entertained Carol by doing her hair and putting her makeup on. Carol loved hanging out with these pretty ladies. She never really knew what they did for a living, nor knew that they lived with her dad and worked for her dad. She missed her mom terribly and didn't really understand why her dad didn't bring her to see her mama. Carol did appreciate the once-a-month visit with her mom. Betty would take the train and then the bus, the 50-mile-plus ride, to spend the day with her. It was all she could manage to do since she was working most of the time. The train ride gave her the much-needed time alone. Sometimes she just sat there and let the tears flow. Round and round her mind went. She would get lost in her thoughts. What happened? Where did things go wrong? What did I do wrong? Why did Arvin need another woman? Who was she? How did he meet her? Did he meet her at a factory? I failed at my marriage. I had to send Carol away. The only thing I seem to be good at is cleaning other people's houses or watching other people's children. Oh, and yes, I'm good at bootlegging for my husband. Betty usually beat herself up on the train ride. The last ride had been different. Her mind was filled with John. Her mind wandered back to the night they met. She had been feeling really low that night. Serena had invited her out and would not take a no for an answer. What a grand night! She met people who seemed interested in her, and of course she met John. That train ride had been her happiest. Betty was so excited to call Carol and give her the good news that she could hardly dial the number. When Carol got to the phone, Betty excitedly said, "Hi, Carol, it's Mama." "Hi, Mama, is everything okay?" Carol said, concerned. "Everything is just fine," Betty said. "When Sister Mary Ellen told me I had a phone call, I got scared something was wrong, Mama." "Why did you call?" "There's a lot to tell you. John asked me to marry him, and he wants you to live with us." "Oh, Mama, that makes me so happy. When?" "He wants us to drive down this weekend to pick you up so we can get married next weekend. Is that okay with you?" Carol answered almost before Betty could get her last word out. "Of course. Yes. It's a perfect time. We just finished a semester. Would I go to school in the city?" "Yes, and I think you're ready for high school." "Oh, Mama, I can't wait until you get here. I'm going to go pack right now," Carol said, almost forgetting to say goodbye. "See you in a couple days. Goodbye." "Bye, Mama. I love you," Carol said with tears of joy in her eye. Carol started jumping up and down with excitement. She started pulling out her clothes from the drawers, folding them, and she even put them in piles and sometimes folded the same piece of clothing twice. Betty felt good. Her heart felt the warmth of Carol's words. "I love you, Mama." She was so excited about having Carol with her again. Of course, she was also excited about getting married. She couldn't wait to tell John that she talked with Carol. As soon as John came to pick her up, she said, "John, it's all set. I called the school and talked to Carol. She is so excited about coming to live with us." "Good," John said, then continued, "Betty, you have to make one more call." "Who do I have to call?" "Your landlord. I know you have to give them 2 weeks' notice, but you can move in with me next week. After all, we will be married by then." "You're right. Oh, my. Okay. Can I bring some of my things?" Betty asked. "Whatever you want to bring is fine," John answered. Well, Betty's life seems to be picking up. She seems to be getting into a better place. She's getting married to this wonderful man. Carol's going to come live with her, and both Ruth and Carol are going to be at the wedding. So that's great. I will see you next Tuesday, 10 o'clock, for Story Time with Joyce. If you'd like to purchase the books, you could go to Amazon.com. All books are written by Joyce Bennett-Hall, or you could go to my website, JoyceBennett-Hall.com. Bye. Have a great week.